Welcome back everybody, and for those of you that are new to my channel, my name is Mia and I'm a qualified Portuguese teacher with more than 10 years of experience. Now, if you have been struggling with the adjectives, I never know how to say this, I'm gonna go for adjectives. So if you've been struggling with the adjectives in Portuguese, this video is for you. I will tell you all about these little words and I will let you know the rules to form their plurals. Plus, stay until the end if you want to try to apply what you learn in this video, as I'll be doing a small exercise with you. But before I get into the adjectives, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell somewhere around here so you receive an alert every time I post a new video. So let's talk about the adjectives in Portuguese. So what are adjectives, first of all? Adjectives are words that describe or modify other words, making your writing and speaking much more specific and a whole lot more interesting. So this is kind of the official definition of what an adjective is. But basically, adjectives are words like big or small or cute or funny, or all those words you use to describe something or someone, and they modify the nouns. So if you think about it, it's not the same thing to say a house simply or to say a big house. The word big here modifies the noun house, and that word is actually an adjective and it helps us understand and imagine the world around us much better. So in Portuguese, adjectives are also used with the same goal in mind as well as in English, so no problems in there. However, Portuguese adjectives have two things that are kind of original. So those two things are their position in the sentence and the fact that they vary. So first, let's look at their position in the sentence. While in English and some other languages, adjectives come before the nouns, in Portuguese they actually generally come after. So let's see, if we take a look at the following examples and we compare English to Portuguese. In English you have the big car, so the order is first the adjective and then the noun. But in Portuguese you have o carro grande. Here the order is first a noun and then the adjective. The same happens with the beautiful girl. You have the order is adjective and then noun, versus a menina bonita, where you have noun and then adjective. So as you can see, in English the adjective comes before the noun it modifies, but in Portuguese it comes after the noun. So this is true for the majority of the cases. However, we do have some exceptions as always when the adjective also comes before the noun in Portuguese. This is rare, but it does happen. We normally do this, for example, when we want to reinforce an idea or when we want to give a more metaphorical meaning to the words. For example, homem grande, and this will mean a big man, homem grande, or you can have grande homem, and if you put it this way, then this will mean a great man. The same way, if you have uma mulher pobre, this will mean just a poor woman, someone who doesn't have money. But if you have uma pobre mulher, this will also mean a poor woman, but more metaphorically, as when you pity the woman for some reason. So if you look at these sentences, you see that they have different meanings just because of the position of the adjective. In both examples, the first sentences of each group refer to the actual or the physical, characteristic of the person, while the second sentences actually refer to a trait of the character of these people. So it conveys kind of a more of a metaphorical meaning. Another reason to change the normal order of the sentence in Portuguese is when we want to highlight some characteristic that we are describing. So, for example, in these examples, uma ideia má versus uma má ideia. Or concorrente bom versus bom concorrente. So here we really want to let the others know that that idea was really bad, uma má ideia, in the first example, and that the contestant was really good in the second example. So we highlight those characteristics by bringing the adjective to the position before the noun. So as you can see, in general, adjectives in Portuguese come after the noun, but there are some exceptions when we want to either convey a more metaphorical meaning or when we want to highlight a certain characteristic. But bear in mind that this doesn't apply to every adjective, but it applies only to some, like bad or good, for example, the ones we saw here. So now that you know this, let's talk about the second thing that distinguishes adjectives in Portuguese, which is the variation. Unlike in English, adjectives in Portuguese will vary according to the gender and number of the noun that they are modifying, so they will depend on the noun. For example, if the noun is masculine and singular, the adjective will also have that form. But if the noun is feminine and singular, generally the adjective will have a different form. And the same happens if the noun is plural, either feminine or masculine. So in general, adjectives have 4 different forms. So let's see these examples. You have a mulher bonita. A mulher bonita, that's the feminine singular form. But you have o homem bonito, that's the masculine singular form. And then if you go for plural, you have as mulheres bonitas, that's feminine plural. And then you'll have os homens bonitos, which is masculine plural. So as you can see, not only the nouns, but also the adjectives changed according to the gender, masculine or feminine, and the number, singular or plural, of the noun. So in general, adjectives, as I said, have 4 different forms. But for example, if an adjective ends in something other than an O in the masculine singular form, it generally will only change according to number, singular and plural, and not according to gender, masculine and feminine. Okay, so it only will have kind of 2 forms. So this is the case of the adjective contente, for example. Let's see, you will say a mulher contente, and that's the feminine singular form, but you will also say o homem contente, that's the masculine singular form, and they are the same. But then you will change it to plural, so you say as mulheres contentes, feminine plural form, and os homens contentes, masculine plural form. So as you see, you'll only have 2 forms, as I said, contentes and contentes, because the adjective doesn't end in an O in the masculine singular form. So we now know that there are in general 4 different forms for the adjectives, but yeah, sometimes you can have also 2. So to form the plurals of the adjectives in Portuguese, we must follow certain rules. So here come the rules. The first one is when the adjective ends in an A or an E or an I, an O or an U in the masculine singular form, you just need to add an S to form the plural, the letter S. So you have bonito, bonita, bonitos, and bonitas, like we saw before. And then the second rule is when an adjective ends in an M, exchange the M for an N and add an S. So bom becomes boa, bons becomes boas, comum becomes comuns. All right? So third rule, when an adjective ends in a consonant, add an ES to form the plural. So for example, the adjective exemplar will become exemplares. Feliz will become felizes. Rule number 4, when an adjective ends in an S, it has the same form in the singular and plural. So for example, the adjective simples will be like this across all forms. Number 5, when an adjective ends in an ão, it can form the plural in 3 different ways. You can add an S, órfão, for example, becomes órfãos. and órfã becomes órfãs. You can also transform the ão into ões. For example, anão becomes anões. Okay, so then you can also transform the ão into ães. Ancião will become anciães. Unfortunately, you'll have to know these by heart as there isn't any rule that I know of that can guide you, so I'm sorry about that. Number 6. When an adjective ends in an L, it will form the plural by transforming the L into an IS. So the adjective formal will become formais. Banal will become banais. Okay, so these are the 6 rules to form the plurals of the adjectives in Portuguese. Some of these rules are the same for the nouns, but I'll be making also a video about the plurals of the nouns soon. Okay, at least I'm gonna try that. So, in conclusion, adjectives in Portuguese can be a little bit tricky, especially when forming the plurals. However, if you follow the rules above, you'll likely use them correctly. Now, I would like to ask you to answer the following questions. You'll have 5 seconds to answer, and then I'll give you the right answer at the end. So, knowing what you know now, what is the plural of the following adjectives? Importante. Importantes. Capaz. Capazes. Formal. Formais. Okay, now you try to answer in the comments below what the plural of the following adjectives are. Coerente, invernal, bom, mau, and feliz. I'll be waiting for your answers. And this is it. For more adjectives, please check the link to my blog post below. And also, if you liked my video and you want to support my work, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to know when I post new videos, because that would really help me and I would really appreciate that. I thank you in advance, and that's it for today. I'll see you in the next video. Beijinhos! Mwah!